The wedding was supposed to be the most perfect day of his life, until the woman arranging the flowers became the only person brave enough to see the truth. Alexander Whitmore had spent years building a reputation that made people believe nothing could surprise him. As the head of one of New York's most influential mafia families, he was known for his intelligence, discipline, and ability to keep every detail of his life under control. Every decision was carefully planned, every relationship carefully considered, and every public appearance designed to strengthen his image. Now, standing at the center of the most important event of his life, Alexander believed everything was finally falling into place. His wedding was meant to represent a powerful alliance and a new chapter for his family. The venue was decorated with thousands of fresh flowers. The guest list included some of the most respected names in the city, and every detail had been arranged perfectly. Among the many people working behind the scenes was Olivia Carter, the florist responsible for creating the atmosphere of elegance throughout the ceremony. Unlike the wealthy guests and powerful figures surrounding Alexander, Olivia was someone most people barely noticed. She arrived early, worked quietly, and focused only on making sure every arrangement was exactly right. To many people at the wedding, she was simply the woman handling the flowers. They saw her as someone who belonged in the background. But Olivia noticed things others ignored. She noticed the nervous expressions, the unusual conversations, and the small details that did not match the perfect image everyone else believed. Alexander first saw Olivia when she was adjusting a floral arrangement near the altar. He expected her to be like many people he had encountered before, someone hoping to gain attention by getting close to his world. But Olivia did not look impressed by his name, his wealth, or his influence. She simply greeted him politely and returned to her work. That caught his attention. Most people changed when they were around Alexander Whitmore. They became careful with their words or tried to make themselves seem important. Olivia didn't either. She treated him like any other person. As the ceremony approached, Alexander focused on the celebration ahead. He did not know that the florist quietly arranging flowers nearby was carrying a piece of information that could change everything. Olivia had discovered something that made her question whether the wedding should happen at all. She understood the consequences of speaking up. She knew many people would rather protect a powerful man's image than listen to an uncomfortable truth. But Olivia had always believed that doing the right thing mattered more than staying silent. For years, Alexander had believed control was the key to protecting his future. He believed every problem had a solution if he had enough information and influence. He never imagined that the biggest challenge of his life would come from someone he barely noticed. A woman with flowers in her hands. A woman without wealth, power, or status. A woman who was about to step out of the background and reveal the secret hidden at the center of his perfect wedding. Alexander Whitmore had always believed that the people closest to him were the ones who understood his world the least. They saw the power, the reputation, and the carefully planned image, but they rarely saw the pressure behind it. That was why he valued control above everything else. Control meant certainty. Control meant avoiding mistakes. But as the wedding ceremony moved closer, one person quietly began noticing the details that Alexander had overlooked. Olivia Carter continued arranging flowers throughout the morning, but her attention was not limited to colors, designs, or decorations. She observed people. She noticed the way conversations stopped when certain names were mentioned. She noticed the hesitation in some voices and the tension behind polite smiles. Olivia had spent years working with different families during important events, and she understood that emotions often revealed what words try to hide. The wedding looked perfect from the outside. Every flower was placed exactly where it belonged. Every guest appeared excited. Every detail represented success. But Olivia felt something was missing. Something about the day did not feel honest. She knew she was only the florist. She knew people with more power would not expect her opinion. In fact, most guests barely looked in her direction. That was exactly why Olivia was able to see what others ignored. She was not distracted by status or expectations. She was simply paying attention. Meanwhile, Alexander was preparing for the ceremony, believing he had finally created the future he wanted. He trusted the people around him because he believed they had earned that trust. He had spent months making decisions that protected his family name and strengthened important relationships. The idea that someone close to him could be hiding something never crossed his mind. Olivia struggled with her decision. She knew revealing what she had discovered could change the entire atmosphere of the wedding. She could lose her opportunity, damage her reputation, and become the person everyone blamed for ruining a powerful man's special day. But she also knew that staying silent would mean ignoring something she believed was important. Her choice was not about gaining attention. It was not about becoming part of Alexander's world. It was about doing what she believed was right. As the guests began taking their seats, Olivia looked around the beautifully decorated room. The flowers she created represented love, celebration, and new beginnings. Yet she knew that a beautiful appearance could never replace the truth. Alexander walked through the venue greeting guests, completely unaware of the decision Olivia was preparing to make. To him, she was still just the florist who helped create the perfect setting. He had no idea that she held information that could change how he saw the people closest to him. For years, Alexander had believed that power allowed him to recognize every threat and every opportunity. But he had never considered that the most important truth in his life might come from someone everyone else overlooked. As the moment for the ceremony arrived, Olivia took one final look at the flowers surrounding the altar. They were beautiful, but beauty alone was not enough. Some things needed to be revealed, no matter how difficult the truth might be. And soon, the entire room would discover why the quiet florist had been paying attention all along. Alexander Whitmore stood near the altar surrounded by hundreds of carefully chosen guests, believing that every detail of his future had already been decided. The music played softly, the flowers created the perfect atmosphere, and everyone waited for the ceremony to begin. To the people in the room, it looked like the beginning of a powerful new chapter. But Olivia Carter knew that appearances could be misleading. She stood quietly near the floral arrangements she had created, holding the information that had been weighing on her since she discovered the truth. She did not want attention. She did not want recognition. She only wanted to make sure Alexander was not making one of the biggest decisions of his life without knowing everything. For several minutes, Olivia watched the ceremony preparations continue. She saw guests smiling, taking pictures, and celebrating what they believed was a perfect moment. But she also saw Alexander's confidence, the confidence of a man who believed he had complete control over his future. That was the part that made her decision more difficult. Alexander was not someone who would easily accept unexpected information, especially from someone he considered a stranger. Olivia knew that when she spoke, people might question her intentions. They might wonder why a florist would interfere in a powerful man's wedding. But Olivia also knew that the truth did not become less important because of who revealed it. As the ceremony was about to begin, Olivia took a deep breath and stepped forward. The room slowly became quiet as people noticed her movement. Alexander looked toward her with surprise. He recognized her as the florist who had spent the morning arranging the flowers, but he could not understand why she was approaching the altar. "I am sorry to interrupt," Olivia said calmly, "but there is something you need to know before this ceremony continues." The guests exchanged confused looks. The atmosphere changed instantly. Alexander studied her carefully. He expected many things from the people around him, but he never expected this. "What is this about?" he asked. Olivia looked at him with honesty rather than fear. "I discovered something that affects this decision you are about to make." Her words created silence throughout the room. Alexander had spent years dealing with difficult situations, but this moment felt different. It was not a business discussion. It was not a negotiation. It was personal. He looked at Olivia, trying to understand why she was willing to step into a situation that did not directly involve her. "Why are you telling me this?" Alexander asked. Olivia answered simply, "Because if I were in your position, I would want someone to tell me the truth." Those words stayed with him. For the first time that day, Alexander looked beyond the flowers, the guests, and the perfect image surrounding him. He looked at the person standing in front of him and realized she had nothing to gain from this moment. In fact, she had everything to lose. The room waited for Olivia to continue. Alexander waited as well, still uncertain, but now willing to listen. The woman everyone had overlooked was about to reveal the secret that would change the entire direction of his life. The entire room became silent as Olivia Carter prepared to reveal the truth she had discovered. The guests who had been celebrating moments earlier now watched with curiosity and uncertainty. Alexander Whitmore remained near the altar, looking at the florist who had suddenly become the center of attention. He was used to people approaching him because of his influence, but Olivia's presence felt different. She was not asking for anything. She was not trying to create a scene. She was simply standing there because she believed he deserved to know the truth before making a life-changing decision. Olivia carefully explained what she had discovered. She revealed that the image surrounding the wedding did not match the reality behind the scenes. Certain details she noticed while preparing the flowers led her to uncover information that changed how Alexander viewed the situation. She did not exaggerate. She did not make accusations based on emotion. She simply shared the facts she had found and allowed Alexander to decide what he believed. That was what made the moment powerful. Olivia was not trying to control the outcome. She was giving him the choice that had almost been taken away from him. Alexander listened carefully. Every word forced him to reconsider the confidence he had carried into the ceremony. For years, he believed his ability to read people was one of his greatest strengths. He believed he could recognize honesty and deception better than anyone else. Yet standing there, he realized there was something he had overlooked. He had trusted an image because it matched what he wanted to believe. Olivia had noticed the truth because she was willing to look beyond appearances. The guests watched as Alexander remained quiet. Many expected anger or immediate judgment, but instead they saw a man processing information that challenged everything he thought he knew. Olivia noticed his expression and understood that this was not easy for him. She knew a single conversation could not erase years of trust and expectations. But she also knew that ignoring the truth would create a bigger problem later. "I know this is difficult to hear," Olivia said calmly, "but I would rather be honest now than allow you to discover it after it is too late." Alexander looked at her with a mixture of surprise and respect. The woman he barely noticed before the ceremony was now the person showing him the most consideration. She had walked into a room filled with powerful people and chosen honesty over comfort. That was something Alexander could not ignore. He looked around at the wedding he had carefully planned. The flowers, the guests, the celebration, and the future he imagined all suddenly felt different. He realized that a perfect appearance meant nothing without trust behind it. After a long moment, Alexander made his decision. The ceremony could not continue until he understood the full truth. He turned away from the altar, leaving the guests stunned. The wedding that everyone expected to remember as a celebration had become the moment when Alexander Whitmore discovered the importance of seeing beyond appearances. And the florist everyone overlooked had become the person who changed everything. Alexander Whitmore had always believed that the most important decisions in life were the ones made with confidence. He built his reputation by making choices quickly, trusting his instincts, and rarely allowing uncertainty to control him. But after the wedding was stopped, Alexander found himself facing a situation he never expected. For the first time in years, he had to admit that his confidence had been built on incomplete information. The ceremony had ended, but the questions had only begun. Alexander asked for time to understand everything Olivia Carter had revealed. He did not want rumors, assumptions, or emotional reactions to decide what happened next. He wanted the truth. That was something Olivia respected about him. She had not stepped forward to create chaos. She had done it because she believed honesty mattered more than appearances. As the guests slowly left the venue, Alexander remained surrounded by the flowers Olivia had arranged. A few hours earlier, those flowers represented a celebration. Now they reminded him of the moment everything changed. He thought about how easily he had overlooked Olivia. To him, she had been just another person hired to help create a beautiful event. He never imagined that the quiet florist would be the one person who cared enough to protect him from a decision he might regret. Later that evening, Alexander met with Olivia privately. He wanted to understand why she had taken such a risk. "You knew people might blame you," Alexander said. "You knew many would question your reasons. Why did you still speak up?" Olivia looked at him calmly. "Because doing the right thing is not always the easiest thing." Her answer stayed with him. Alexander had spent his life surrounded by people who calculated every move. Many relationships in his world were based on advantage and opportunity. Olivia was different. She had no reason to challenge the wedding except because she believed the truth mattered. Alexander began asking more questions about what she had discovered. As Olivia explained everything, he realized how close he had come to making a decision based only on what others wanted him to see. He had trusted the image created around him instead of looking deeper. That realization was difficult because Alexander prided himself on understanding people. Yet the person he underestimated had understood the situation better than anyone else. "I owe you an apology," Alexander said. Olivia looked surprised. "For what?" "For assuming I knew your intentions before knowing you." Those words were not easy for Alexander to say. He was a man who rarely admitted mistakes, especially in front of others. But this moment was different. He understood that acknowledging the truth was the first step toward becoming a better person. Olivia accepted his apology, but remained honest. An apology matters, but what you do after matters more. Alexander respected that response. She was not looking for gratitude. She was not seeking a reward. She simply wanted him to learn from what happened. Over the following days, Alexander continued investigating the truth behind the broken wedding. But something else was changing as well. He began seeing Olivia differently. He no longer saw her as the florist who interrupted his ceremony. He saw her as the person who had given him the chance to make a better choice. For a man who had spent years believing power gave him control over everything, this lesson was unexpected. The woman everyone overlooked had shown him that honesty could come from the most unexpected places. And Alexander was beginning to realize that the greatest mistake he made was not trusting Olivia. It was believing that someone without power could not have the greatest influence on his life. Alexander Whitmore had spent his entire life believing that people revealed their true intentions through their actions, but recent events forced him to question that belief. He had judged Olivia Carter before truly knowing her, and now he was beginning to understand how much he had missed by looking only at appearances. The woman he once saw as a simple florist had become the person who reminded him that honesty could exist without personal gain. After the wedding was canceled, Alexander continued searching for the complete truth behind the situation. He reviewed every detail carefully, not because he doubted Olivia, but because he wanted to understand how he had failed to notice the signs before. For someone who built his life around awareness and control, accepting that he had overlooked something important was not easy. Olivia, meanwhile, returned to her flower shop and continued her normal routine. She did not expect anything from Alexander. She did not wait for recognition or a reward. She simply returned to the life she had before the wedding, believing she had done what was necessary. That was one of the things that surprised Alexander the most. Many people around him would have used the situation as an opportunity to gain influence or attention. Olivia did the opposite. She stepped away. One afternoon, Alexander visited Olivia's flower shop. The small space was completely different from the world he knew. There were no important meetings, no powerful guests, and no pressure to maintain an image. There were only flowers, customers, and Olivia creating something beautiful with her own hands. Alexander looked around and realized this place reflected her personality. Simple, genuine, and thoughtful. "You could have used what happened to become well known," Alexander said. "You could have told everyone your story." Olivia continued arranging flowers and smiled. "That was never the reason I spoke up." Alexander nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that Olivia's strength came from something he rarely saw. She did not need attention to know her own worth. She did not need approval from powerful people to believe in herself. During their conversation, Alexander opened up about something he rarely discussed. He admitted that years of responsibility had made him believe everyone had a hidden purpose. He had become so focused on protecting himself that he stopped recognizing sincerity. Olivia listened carefully. She did not judge him or tell him he was wrong for being cautious. Instead, she reminded him that protecting yourself did not mean closing yourself off from everyone. Those words stayed with Alexander. He realized that the greatest protection was not always distance. Sometimes it was knowing who deserved trust. Over the next few weeks, Alexander found himself thinking differently. He paid more attention to the people around him. He listened before making decisions. He considered perspectives beyond his own. These changes were small, but they represented something important. Olivia had not changed him by demanding anything. She had changed him by showing him a different way to see the world. For the first time in years, Alexander felt that he was not simply controlling his life. He was actually experiencing it. He still carried the responsibilities of being a powerful man, but he no longer believed that power meant ignoring compassion. The florist who had interrupted his wedding had become the person who helped him understand the value of truth. And Alexander was beginning to realize that losing a perfect image was not the same as losing everything. Sometimes, it was the first step toward finding something real. Alexander Whitmore had spent years believing that respect came from power, reputation, and the ability to make difficult decisions without hesitation. But after everything that happened, he began to understand that true respect was earned in a completely different way. It was earned through honesty, consistency, and the way a person treated others when there was nothing to gain. Olivia Carter had shown him that lesson without ever trying to teach it. She simply lived by it. However, not everyone around Alexander understood the changes happening in his life. People who had known him for years noticed that he was different. He was more patient during conversations. He listened before making decisions. He no longer viewed every situation as something that needed to be controlled. To some, these changes were surprising. To others, they were concerning. They believed Alexander was becoming too influenced by someone who did not belong in his world. One evening, Alexander attended a formal gathering with several important members of his organization. The conversation eventually turned toward the canceled wedding and the events that followed. Some people questioned why Alexander continued speaking with Olivia. They believed she was simply a florist who had unexpectedly entered a world much larger than her own. Alexander listened quietly as they shared their opinions. In the past, he might have agreed. He might have seen Olivia the same way they did. But now he understood something they did not. They were judging her without knowing her. "You are making the same mistake I made," Alexander finally said. The room became quiet. "You are deciding who someone is before taking the time to understand them." His words surprised everyone, including himself. Months earlier, Alexander would never have defended someone without considering how it affected his image. But now he realized that protecting the truth mattered more than protecting appearances. Later that evening, Alexander spoke with Olivia about the conversation. He told her that some people still questioned why he trusted her. Olivia listened carefully before responding. "People often fear what they do not understand," she said. "But their opinions do not decide who I am." Alexander admired that confidence. Olivia did not need approval from powerful people. She did not measure her worth by the opinions of others. That was something Alexander had rarely seen in his own world. He had spent years surrounded by people who carefully managed their image. Olivia was different because she did not need to create one. She was simply genuine. As their friendship grew stronger, Alexander began noticing how much Olivia influenced the way he approached life. She reminded him to slow down and consider the human side of every decision. She showed him that being powerful did not mean ignoring kindness. It meant having the ability to use that power responsibly. One afternoon, Alexander visited Olivia's flower shop again. He watched her help a customer choose flowers for an important occasion. She treated every person with the same patience and care, regardless of who they were. That moment confirmed what Alexander had already started to understand. Olivia was not special because she had changed his life. She was special because she had always been that kind of person. He was simply finally seeing it. For the first time, Alexander realized that the person everyone overlooked was the person who had the strongest influence on him. The florist who stood quietly in the background had become the person who helped him see the world differently. And Alexander knew that this change was not temporary. It was the beginning of a new way of living. Alexander Whitmore had once believed that the strongest people were the ones who never showed uncertainty. He thought confidence meant having every answer, and control meant never allowing unexpected changes. But after meeting Olivia Carter, he began to understand that strength could look very different. Sometimes strength was the courage to admit mistakes. Sometimes it was the patience to listen. And sometimes it was the ability to change when the truth demanded it. As time passed, Alexander continued building a different relationship with the people around him. He was still respected as a powerful mafia boss, but those closest to him noticed that something had changed. He no longer made decisions based only on reputation or appearances. He started considering how his choices affected others. Olivia never asked him to change. She never gave him instructions or tried to reshape his personality. She simply showed him a different perspective through her actions. That was what made her influence so meaningful. One afternoon, Alexander invited Olivia to an important community event connected to his organization. In the past, he would have chosen someone based on status or connections. This time, he wanted someone who represented honesty and dedication. Olivia was surprised by the invitation. She did not see herself as someone who belonged among powerful people. Alexander disagreed. "You have spent more time helping people than most people who claim to be leaders," he told her. Olivia smiled, but remained humble. Everyone has something valuable to offer when they are given the chance. Her words reminded Alexander of how often people were judged before anyone understood their story. He thought about how he had viewed Olivia on the day of the wedding. He had seen a florist working in the background. He had not seen the person behind the flowers. Now he understood that every person carried experiences, knowledge, and values that were not always visible at first glance. During the event, Alexander watched Olivia interact with everyone around her. She spoke with employees, guests, and families with the same kindness she had always shown. She did not change depending on someone's position. That consistency impressed him more than any display of wealth or influence ever could. Later, Alexander told Olivia something he had been thinking about. "I used to believe people respected me because of what I had built," he said. "But I think I was wrong. The people who truly matter are the ones who respect you because of who you are." Olivia looked at him and smiled. That is something everyone has to learn at their own pace. Alexander knew she was right. His transformation had not happened overnight. It came from many small moments, many conversations, and many lessons he almost missed. He had spent years protecting himself from disappointment, but in doing so, he had also protected himself from meaningful connections. Olivia had never tried to enter his world for personal gain. She had simply shown him that his world could become better if he allowed the right people into it. As Alexander looked at the future ahead, he no longer wanted a life built only around control and reputation. He wanted a life built around truth and trust. The woman who had once stood unnoticed among the flowers had become the person who helped him understand what truly mattered. And Alexander knew that the biggest change in his life was not losing the wedding he thought he wanted. It was discovering the connection he never expected to find. Alexander Whitmore often thought about how different his life had become from the person he used to be. For many years, he believed that success was measured by influence, reputation, and the ability to control every situation. He had built an empire that many people respected, but he had also built walls that kept genuine connections away. Meeting Olivia Carter changed that. She did not enter his life with promises or expectations. She did not try to impress him or become part of his world. She simply stood by her values, and that was what made her unforgettable. Months after the wedding that never happened, Alexander found himself looking back at the moment when everything changed. The flowers at the altar were supposed to represent a perfect beginning, but instead they became a reminder that appearances could hide important truths. Olivia had the courage to reveal what others ignored, and because of that, Alexander had the chance to make a better choice. Their connection continued to grow naturally. Olivia never forgot who she was, and Alexander never forgot the lesson she taught him. He respected her independence, her honesty, and the way she treated every person with the same kindness regardless of their position. One evening, Alexander visited Olivia's flower shop after a long day. He watched her prepare arrangements for customers and noticed the same patience she had shown from the beginning. She cared about every detail, not because someone powerful was watching, but because she believed small things mattered. "You know," Alexander said, "when I first met you, I thought I understood everything about you." Olivia smiled. "And now?" Alexander looked around the shop before answering. "Now I know I was only seeing what I expected to see." Olivia appreciated his honesty. She knew changing someone's perspective was not about one conversation. It was about the choices they made afterward. Alexander had proven through his actions that his change was real. He listened more. He trusted more carefully instead of simply doubting everyone. He valued people for their character instead of their position. For someone who once believed control was the foundation of strength, this was a completely different way of living. Alexander still carried the responsibilities that came with being a mafia boss. He still had important decisions to make and challenges to face. But he no longer believed that power required him to ignore compassion. He understood that true leadership came from knowing when to listen and when to recognize the value of others. Olivia never became important because of her connection to Alexander. She was important because of who she had always been. The woman who arranged flowers at the edge of the room became the person who changed how a powerful man saw the entire world. Alexander once believed that the perfect future was something he could create through careful planning and control. But he learned that the most meaningful moments often arrived unexpectedly. The truth Olivia revealed at the altar did more than change a wedding. It changed the way Alexander understood trust, honesty, and human connection. And in the end, the person everyone overlooked became the person he respected the most.